Jim, would like to lead us?
I sure would. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Diane.
And Diane?
At this time, we only have one resolution for today, which is, Resolution 827, assumes lead agency and issues a negative declaration pursuant to, Article, 617, Section 6, secret for the special permit and site plan application of Calverton Solar Energy, Center, Nextera, 149 Edwards Avenue and River Road, Calverton, Suffolk County Tax Map 600, 137-1-2.1, is it 17? And then the other tax map, we just need a correction on. So it's tax map 600, 136, 1-2. At this time, I would ask anybody from the public who would like to come up and comment on the resolution to please come forward.
Marty Binder for Calverton.
Art Binder, Buffalo Ranch on Depot Road. Current electric bills, I would say for the average 11933 people is approximately $175 per month. If approved, how much would this monthly expense change for the people of 11933? How much reduction would it encompass?
There is no reduction in the electrical bill, with the siding of the solar.
You're saying somebody who manufactures electricity wants to come here and people aren't gonna get paid. We're gonna give it to them for nothing.
Well, there is,
There is nothing.
Okay,
There is nothing,
okay,
okay? They're not gonna get it.
okay.
That's only openness.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's only the beginning.
Of, would anybody else like to comment?
Nice hat.
How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Really, I need about 3-4 hours of with you
All right,
guys.
I just
but
need
I
you-
know I'm not gonna have 3-4 hours.
You just need to state your name first, sorry.
My name is Ed, and I'm the founder of RiverheadMagazine.com.
Okay, and your last name, Ed?
Graham, as in cracker.
Graham
And,
Cracker.
yeah. That's what they say. So, but don't do crack. So, but the bottom line is, I've reviewed this probably more than each one of you up there, okay? And this is my due diligence. And what a lot of people don't realize is the impact that this is gonna have on our future. Kids, grandchildren, because nobody knows the chemicals that are in solar panels. There's cadmium, there's lead. They referred me to Brookhaven Lab to see about the chemicals. They said they know a lot. They say that cadmium is not water soluble. Every other scientist in the country says that cadmium, the way it is in solar panels, is water soluble, meaning that when they're damaged and rainwater comes down, they go into our ground and they go into our groundwater. Once they're in our groundwater, they will actually be used to irrigate crops, soil-based crops, your lettuce, your potatoes, your onions, whatever's growing out of the crops around them. If there's a fire, the chemicals go airborne. Cadmium goes airborne in the dust. And that gets settled down when the fire comes down, settles on the crops in the neighboring communities. There's a lot of hazards. It's actually, Google it, and you'll find that solar panels are considered hazardous, toxic waste. And right now, there is no plan to get rid of those panels off Long Island. There is no way to dispose of them. They're not recyclable because of the chemicals that are in the panels themselves make it unworthy of recyclable, and China has actually taken out the silver that made it worth recycling. Okay, they took the silver out to cheapen the solar panels so we could buy it in this country cheaper. But in so doing so, they made them pretty much not worth recycling. So they're stockpiling. How do I know this? Because in California, they started this whole Green New Deal in California 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And they said, oh, we'll come up with a plan to get rid of these solar panels by the time they figure out, by the time these things expire. Because they only live about 15, 20 years, max 25. They lose about 1% efficiency every year. So in 20 years, they'll be about 80% efficient, which is pretty much useless. So what do we do with those panels? We can't bring them to a junkyard. We can't bring them to a landfill. There's no way of transporting them. It's millions of panels, tonnage, thousands of tons of cadmium, all in these panels. So what's gonna happen? They're gonna stockpile like they did in California. And they got stockpiles of it. Huge, massive stockpiles where these chemicals are now leaching into the grounds. Unfortunately, our groundwater is a lot closer to the surface than in California. So when these chemicals leach into our ground, they're actually impacting our water supply for everybody. So you could say private owners have the right to do whatever they want with their properties. But when it impacts the whole community, there should be some due diligence there. Everybody thought Roundup was a great thing. Right now, they're $2 billion in lawsuits. Okay? That was a chemical. One chemical. California right now, they had Erin Brockovich, okay? They did a whole movie on her and what she did. That was chromium-6 in California. And you know what? They still haven't figured out that problem yet. They haven't been able to clean it up after all these years. What do you guys, I know you're elected. I know you want to push forward. You think $1 million is a whole lot of money. But what is going to be the civil lawsuits? What are the lawsuits going to, how are they going to impact you guys in the future when people start getting the liver cancers, the kidney cancers, the lung cancers, that all, these chemicals, chromium, are called genotoxins for a reason. They affect generations, not just you, but your kids, your grandkids. You drink the water, you eat the foods from your local farmers, and you have a potential for this to happen. Why? Why would you expedite this so fast without doing due diligence because of a LIPA deadline? You're competing for a November 17th deadline, 4 days from now.
Well, we're not competing, just so you know, we're not competing for the deadline. I certainly, that's not my impetus for this. This meeting was called by several of the board members to come in, but this is for secret determination, and it's to address just these kind of questions to make sure that
And I
they're
saw
thoroughly
at Riverhead
vetted and
Local
answered.
that it's about a deadline. You want to get this thing done before November 17th, LIPA deadline.
Well, it's 3 of the board members that called for the meeting, so Jim and Tim and Jody Giglio called to rush this through, so for the deadline for them. That is not something that, I did not call the meeting, Catherine did not call the meeting, so I understand your concern, and I'm very happy that you came to speak today.
And what is the result of pushing forward with approvals today? How far, where does it go from here? Nobody knows. I've asked hundreds of people over the last few years about this. People don't want this. The people of Riverhead do not want this. They do not want you to risk their health for a few measly pennies that aren't even going to impact their own electric bills. This is so ridiculous. They're fighting this all across the country, in case you haven't done your research. Towns are fighting back, okay? Just Georgetown, right now, actually said no to solar farms. There's a ton of others. San Bernardino, a 1 million acre solar farm. The town people rose up and said no, not in our land. It decreases the value of the properties around it. There's a potential for fires. Those transformers and those converters, there's a potential for a fire at every 7 o'clock hour when they flip over. That's what's happening in California. They're not telling you about it, but people are actually taking pictures of the transformers blowing up at 7 p.m. There's a reason. Because the solar energy actually inverts at that hour and goes online to the grid. And these transformers can't handle it. These converters or inverters or whatever you wanna call them. They blow up. They cause sparks that go into the wilderness, and they cause fires. They're not gonna tell you that, because they have so much money invested in these solar farms that it's crazy. You're getting money, the media is getting money from advertising that they do. There's a lot of money there. So they don't wanna stop these solar farms, but the people don't want it. And I know. And I've done my research and I've figured out.
If you'd like to share some of your research with us, we can certainly
Absolutely.
make it part of the record. If you could give that to Diane
I
Mulham,
only
our
have
town
one
clerk.
copy, I wasn't actually looking.
That's
to-
okay, if you give it-
At another meeting, I would have copies and I could give it out to each one of you, so you have them. Like, these are my originals, I can't really.
Okay,
No.
maybe you could just make some copies so that we can have that be part of the record.
Yeah, absolutely, and I propose, I mean, for you guys to do your due diligence correctly and not be held for negligence in the future, have a debate. Bring both sides to the table. Figure this out, because your decisions impact a lot of people, and future people. Do you know what the cancer rate right now in this area for lung, kidney, and liver cancers are in this area? Do you know what the median line is right now? How do you know 10 years from now it's not increasing? How do you know that you're not having these solar panels dripping into our water supply? And they do. There's all kinds of damages that can occur from hail, from tornadoes, from hurricanes, from just corrosion, time, bird droppings.
So I think if you could share, you know, if you have some of that documented, we can actually, Diane, can your office copy some so we can leave some today as part of the record?
Or if he wants to email it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a website I built called stopthesolarfarms.com. It's not conspiracy theory. I actually collected all the data to make it easy for everybody to actually learn about it if they really want to. And all the information is there. I mean, it's pretty, I mean, I have like, I mean, here's a quote, okay? Lack of technical expertise can be a problem when solar developers like Sustainability Power Group or S-Power incorrectly claim that cadmium in its panels is not water soluble. That claim has been contradicted by previously mentioned Stuttgart research scientists who found cadmium from solar panels can almost completely be washed out over a period of several months by rainwater.
All right, so that's, I said,
Okay?
we'd appreciate if
Those
you'd
are
share
some
that.
of the things that if you just looked, if you Googled it, you would find. I mean, these are the hazardous chemicals that are in solar panels. Yeah, there's chemicals that are 4 times worse that are used in the manufacturing of them that are in China right now in barrels buried in farms in the ground that are killing their farmers, but you don't hear about that because there's no lawyers in China, okay? We don't have any manufacturing in this country. We don't manufacture solar panels here. But the chemicals that are in the solar panels, those leach out when the panels are no longer good. And that's what's gonna impact our, think about millions and millions of panels all across Long Island. After 20 years, what is gonna happen to them? We have farms that have been up for 10 years now. Where are those solar panels gonna be 10 years from now? They stockpile. We used to ship them overseas in containers to third world countries. But you know what? They figured out that 80% efficiency solar panels aren't really that good for them. And they're leaching now into their water supplies. So we're ruining third world countries' water supplies with these outdated, damaged panels.
See, I know that this is a passion for you, but I just kind of wanna stick to the topic here, so
Right.
if, you know, if you wanna.
All it boils down to is people should do their due diligence before they actually start going forward with approvals. Because every approval that you make today makes it harder to stop it in the future.
And that is the whole point of SECR, is to be able to look at all of those things as you make your decisions, how you're going to approve a project.
And I was told in the article, reading it, I could have misinterpreted it, but I saw that you were gonna use Solar Project 1 for solar project number 2?
No.
Without doing a second secret?
They have to every project is looked at individually, but in conjunction with the other projects that are going on, but it's not a carryover from one project to another.
And as far as health hazards are concerned, that was one of my concerns too, when we started to get these big mega panel projects that were coming into the town. And we were given information, I believe, and it was studied through the planning department as to whether or not the transformers would create a health problem. And I can tell you that any solar panel that's leaking, that's not a productive solar panel, would be replaced. What they're doing with these old solar panels, you know, I'm sure that it's in the governor's decommissioning plan, how they have to be disposed of. No,
read
so
it.
you're saying that the governor, where he is requiring PSE&G and all these companies to have 15% renewable energy by 2015 is what it was originally supposed to be. Now it got extended.
There
You're
is no
saying,
decommissioning plan for it as of yet.
okay, so do you,
They hope to have it
okay,
in the future, but they don't have one yet.
okay, so this property is zoned that you're permitted to have solar panels. The planning department has been looking at this application. I think SECRA started, and Greg, I'll have you correct me if I'm wrong. I think SECRA started in April of 2018. Okay, we're at the end of 2019. So that process has started a long time ago. The application has been
Do you even
looked at.
realize, Jody, I don't wanna cut you
No,
off,
but you are,
not
and let me
nothing,
finish.
But I get that part, okay? But you know that when you put the solar farms above it and to the side of it, all the wildlife that used to occupy that property, those properties, are now on that property that you're talking about.
You know what, I would much rather see industrial buildings built in industrial zones with jobs that are being created, but I don't own the property. The property owner owns the property, he sold the property to these people, and it's a permitted use. It's been going through the planning process for a year and a half, longer.
Permitted use is to destroy people's health. I could see property owners having choice over their property, but when it actually affects the community as a whole, I think that it's your job to say, you know what, that's not a good use for that property.
Well,
You're
SECRA,
endangering a lot of people, and I don't care about what, they told me to go to Brookhaven. I went to Brookhaven, I found out what their facts are, and it's contradicted by many scientists across the country. So, I don't believe Brookhaven, they put their plutonium in their own iconic, I mean, that's who you're going by?
no,
Why don't you do each one of you guys should have done this. I mean, seriously, I mean, if you really wanted to do something that crazy,
you know,
where you're
this,
putting that many
this,
solar farms
this
in one
special
area?
town board meeting is happening today. We're not approving the project gets approved through the planning department. Okay, we're saying that it's a negative declaration under the laws of SECRA. This process has been going on since last April. So now, the planning, let me finish. So now the planning staff is looking at everything under SECRA. The SECRA report was done the 3rd week in September. It was never submitted to the town board to be adopted, or at least the town board as a body to be adopted. The purchaser of the property, who bought the property, said that by October 31st, he had a deadline. The supervisor called and asked for an extension of the deadline through PSE&G and their government representative, and said that this resolution would have been adopted at the November 6th town board meeting. It was not.
I did not say that.
Okay, well, I have emails in writing
You
from
can
him
say
that you can
whatever
say
you want,
he's a
Jody,
liar.
but
Yeah,
I
Jody,
know about
here.
we asked for the
It says the lead
extension,
agency
but I did
issued
not
a
ask for it.
positive determination of significance for the Solar One project requiring preparation of an environmental impact statement. The application was subjected to a comprehensive secret review, so you only did it on Solar One.
That was
Where's the
taking down
Solar
trees,
Two?
right?
There's no Solar Two. There is none. Where? It's not public.
Solar 2 is, it actually is a couple more megawatts than this project. It's 25, so it actually gets, vetted at the state level. It becomes part of the Public Authorities Law under Article 10.
So there is
that's
no secret review that you're talking about.
for Solar 2.
For Solar Two.
It's all in the process of happening at this, but at the state level. Because once you hit 25 megawatts of power, it becomes part of public authorities, and then is vetted in a very extensive process through the state, which is actually a couple year. Do you wanna describe the process?
That's the Article 10 review.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that.
Okay,
Fine.
so here, are you combining all these solar projects, 1, 2, 3, all together? Cause you have 76 megawatts that you're pushing out. 76 total. 65 now, but I can go up to 76. Are they all one big thing?
No.
Or are you dividing it into separate parts so you can get expedited on certain things to cut below certain things?
Once
I
we
mean, what's the
finish with
purpose?
once we finish with the public comment here, we will have our town planner come up to answer some of these questions, because this is on resolution to make a determination of its significance, whether it is a, type 1, which has a positive declaration, has significance, or it does not, and that is what is up for discussion today.
We did deem it a type 1.
It
It's
is
a type 1, yes,
it
it's
is
a type
type
1,
one.
but whether it's a positive declaration, meaning that it needs to go back to answer other further environmental questions, or whether the record that we have in place, is sufficient to say no more further, questions need to be answered as far as secret is concerned.
And just so you know, I did a FOIA request on this, and I looked at the habitats that they were talking about. They were so far off on their review that another one should have to be done if you're gonna do this the right way. There's migratory birds like the killdeer that weren't even mentioned. There's blue heron, there's bald eagles on the properties. There's frogs, there's all kinds of wildlife there that weren't even mentioned in the review. So, I mean, they plan on cutting down 1,000 trees, okay, with a special permit. 3 inches in diameter or greater. Who's gonna
I
allow
don't think
that?
they're cutting down
I don't
1,000
know.
trees.
Oh, yeah,
No.
look at the blueprints again.
Those,
We will ask these questions of
Yeah.
our planner when he
Please,
comes
enough.
up.
Thank
And
you,
then-
thank you very much.
These are things that are important.
And I just wanna say, first of all, I wanna say that, I was dismayed that this meeting was called at the same time that there was another event. And I'm certainly not interested in, moving this along so quickly and barreling along. I'll have questions for the planning board, I don't disagree with a lot of the things that you said. I really don't understand why we would neg deck this, and yet, S-Power 1 was a positive, and they're adjacent properties.
And not to mention that solar farms were designed to be on pretty much non-viable land.
Right.
It was supposed to be on flat land. Have you been to the property that you're talking about? There's so many hills and mounds, it's a golf course. It's not flat. You're gonna have to regrade that whole entire property to put
Used to
some
be
solar.
flat, if you remember.
It's not now,
Well,
you know.
if
There's
you've been
hills.
here your whole life like me,
I
it used to be
played the
flat.
course, yeah, I used to play.
It used to be flat, they created that, so.
Yes, but there's plenty of mounds, there's actually, like, people don't understand, but there's wetlands there, and you wanna be 150 feet away from the wetlands, but what's gonna prevent damaged panels from leaching into the ground and running into our wetlands? There's nothing to stop it, there's no fence that you can put up that stops it, it's gonna go.
Alright,
We
Thank
certainly,
you.
we
We
certainly need to
appreciate-
take a hard look at everything, we do have more solar coming into our town than anyone else does.
It's way too much,
So,
and.
we need to take a hard look at this. For
And
me,
just so
I,
you know, people around the country are stopping these, okay? They're starting to look at this comprehensively, realizing that this is not a good thing. Besides the fact that things have changed. There's new farmers deals. Farmers used to use the solar panel thing, they were approached because they were weak. Farmers weren't putting out, they were losing their farms. So they figured that these solar panels would help them keep their farms.
Well, we don't allow that.
we
But
don't allow
now-
that.
We don't allow that.
Well, now, there's big farm deals ahead. Japan, China, Mexico, Canada, huge farms, hundreds of billions of dollars, that now these farmers may decide, hey, it's more beneficial for me to use my land for farming.
We don't allow it. It's not allowed in Riverhead.
It's not permitted in Riverhead.
farming?
No, we don't allow, unless you're in an industrial zone, we don't allow you to manufacture electricity and sell it back to the grid. So the farmers have come in here and said that they've wanted to sell their properties to solar panel companies, and it's been rejected. They're not allowed to put it on the farms, they're only allowed to put it on industrial properties. And there's a very small piece of farmland on this property that's before you today that hasn't been farmed in years.
So what's to stop it from being reformed again?
Well, it's about 70 acres, it's a
70
fairly,
acres of farmland that's being farmed currently?
we can check with Jeff, but I believe
It's
there's
not
70
being
acres of
It's
farmed.
farmland.
actually
farmed.
reformed, and a
But
lot of
it's
these,
not, it hasn't been formed in
if you
years.
look at those reports,
It is.
when they did these reports, 2015 or so, there wasn't anything on that property. The grounds were overgrown. Now there's a tenant there. The tenant maintains the properties. The catering hall is mint now.
Yes.
You know, there's a miniature golf
So,
course
Mr. Graham,
now.
I'm just gonna let some other people come up that would like to address, but
Yeah,
please,
more
I would,
people came in,
I would
so-
like you to please, if you could give us or email, our town clerk, the information that you have, so we can make it part of the record.
Yes, I will, but
Thank you.
please, give us the time, these people here, to actually be accountable, you know, because to be honest with you, this rushing through, this is what they did in every community, and there's been so much pushback, but it's too late. Once they start, there's no going back. You can't take these panels out and put them somewhere.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
So do your due diligence, please.
And while you're sitting down, I do wanna say that it's upsetting to me that there's been no public input on this prior to this, that we've had no hearings, and, it's disconcerting that we're moving this along at this speed.
Is there anybody else that would like to come up and address the board?
Hey guys, how's everybody? Almost everybody here knows me, I'm Dean Del Preti, I am the tenant for the property, the old Calverton Links property. So, solar panel, no, not solar panel, that's for you guys to decide, but what I see is the community that goes there, they don't want solar panel. And there's no public discussion, there's nothing. And for them, on one day's notice, less than 24 hours, to get here and have a voice, that's not fair. So I would say, just,
So you currently rent the property there?
rent the property.
And you have events there? How often do you have events?
I probably have 4 or 5 events a year, kind of major events that need permits, but
That we let you have.
we're on the property every day. Total amount of people that come through that property is
And it's all recreation for the community?
all recreation, 40 to 50,000 people a year between paintball and mini golf. They're enjoying the community.
So did you ever think of buying the property so that you could continue doing that? Because I know I bring my kids there to play paintball, and I know that they're not happy about this either, and we pay a lot of money to come there so that they could play paintball. Did you ever think of making an
Yeah.
offer to buy the property?
I would love to buy the property, but the fact that you guys are considering solar panels on that property has made it so expensive that I couldn't buy it. So, had there not been solar panels there, or there was no chance of solar panels, it might be something that I could purchase. So, but definitely I would love to buy it.
It was for sale long before. It was for sale when it was Calverton Links.
Yeah.
Before your current landlord
Yeah.
bought the property.
Yeah, well, that's not what you asked. You asked what I would
Well, you're
consider
saying that the
buying.
solar panel drove up the price.
Yeah.
So, it was for
3.5
sale when it was Calverton Links, and Calverton Links sold it to your landlord.
Right, it wasn't on the public market, it wasn't available for purchase, that was a private deal between my landlord and the current landlord. It wasn't a public option. Had I known about it, I would've put an offer in. But right now, the question was, would I buy it? I would love to buy it, it became so out of the price range. But, and my thing is it's just, let the public, I see the public, they don't want this, just.
We're gonna ask the planning staff, because this is just saying whether or not it meets the guidelines under SECRA. And our planning staff has put together a report, and we're asked all the time to be mindful of our planning staff and the recommendations that they bring forward. This has been studied for over a year and a half, and, you know, they're gonna answer the questions as to when the public forum is, as to whether or not the solar panels, which is an approved use for the property, should go here or not.
Well,
Because then, that maybe there's, you know, I don't know how else to address it, it's a permitted use.
Easy to change.
SECRA is the Environmental Quality Review Act, and Jeff, I will have you come up to please address this. Dean, anything else?
I'll just add one more thing. So in 2018, the planning board did make a recommendation, and SEQA did have they called it a positive, it was a positive declaration. And they said that it needed further study, and it had adverse effects. So, you know, it's a document that you guys have, it's in 2018. It's about solar two. It said that it's a positive declaration.
This is
It's
not
about
solar
solar
two,
two.
this is not solar two.
It's a similar,
This is a solar two document.
it's a
But this is not
similar project.
It's a different property.
It's in addition to that, so it would be an
It's not in
expansion on
addition
that.
to that.
There's 58 concerns in this document.
Right.
That's just one
And that's a
Well,
different
that's
project,
a
but
different project, different
I
area.
do think I don't understand really why these other projects were
But this
studied
isn't
and
solar.
this was,
not solar two.
right.
This
This
is
is
not.
This is
Nextera.
Nextera.
Okay.
A little bit of information
This,
is good.
this is, let me just explain a little bit, Dean, anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, Jeff, could you please come up to address? We're gonna address everything, so there's some clarity as to what we're talking about here.
And actually, I'm gonna say the fact that people don't even know what project we're really even looking at is just another example that the public hasn't had an opportunity to, weigh in on this.
Jeff, is there gonna be a public hearing on this? Okay.
Not on the secret determination.
Well, there never is on secret determination.
Jody, can I finish for a second, please? You can, there,
I don't have the date, I will get the date for you, but we have had a public hearing which was noticed for the
Can
site
you
plan.
get up to the microphone and say that, please?
alright, I'm just, no,
Yes.
Craig, just one second, please.
Yes.
Jody, just 1 second. Jeff, could you please just go through the timeline of this project?
I'm gonna have Greg do that because
Great.
Jeff, you're our planner, you're our chief planner.
You had
I
Karen
would
up
like
there
you
the
to
other
go
day.
out, to go up with, this is one of the largest projects here going on in the town, okay? So the timeline for lead agency, when we got the full environmental assessment, you can have Greg come up and assist you, but I would like you to address the board on this.
But he didn't address the board when we were discussing other things, and you had Karen Gluth, the planner, come up and address the board.
Greg does a wonderful job, but he's an assistant planner. We have the head of the department here. This is a large project in the town of Riverhead. I think it should be addressed by the head of the department.
He didn't
I think
review
it
it.
should be addressed by the person who's been working on it, and from what I understand, it's Greg. Greg, would you please explain it to us? This is ridiculous.
they're both gonna be held accountable.
Absolutely.
So I'm talking about the process of SECRA. I'm not talking about necessarily this particular project here.
Instead of trying to educate Jeff in a matter of minutes, if you could just explain to us, Greg, the process that has gone through. Was there a public hearing on this matter?
Yes, there was a public hearing for the site plan and the special permit. I do not have the dates readily available, but there was a public hearing held
It
by
was
the town board.
back in May.
And there was a
Back-
special permit.
Jody, can
By
I
the
finish,
town
Jody, can
board.
I finish talking for a second? So the hearing was held for the special permit and for the site plan application. It was not held on SECRA, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
There is
that's what I
there-
wanted to be clear on.
The town code, we're not required to hold a public hearing per se on SECRA. The public hearing was noticed for the site plan and the special permit application pursuant to town code.
And
Right,
the
and
special
so-
permit was approved by this board.
Special permit for this project has not been approved.
Oh.
The special permit cannot be approved until the board renders a secret determination.
Right.
Right, and so what we did was we put it through, we requested lead agency at that time,
That's
and that was
correct.
back in May,
That was-
correct?
Yes,
Okay.
May 22nd, the town board classified the action as a type 1 action and circulated a request for lead agency.
Okay.
Lead agency request was sent out to involved agencies. We have received comments back from a number of those agencies.
Have any of those responses been shared with the town board?
We have them, we have not been back before the town board for any sort of work session or any further discussion on this.
So when we put out requests for lead agency, we received information back from the other agencies that were involved, and that has not been shared with the town board, although we are asked to be determined secret at this point.
Well, yes, we have not been before the town board for any work session.
And
But
what is
we
the-
have been receiving comments consistently from when the lead agency circulation
Greg, I
request
would-
was sent.
I would definitely like to see the comments from, the planning board. Planning board has put a tremendous amount of work into these solar projects, and, really, the planning board should have been the lead agency on this.
Well, no, we're the planning board.
You
Jeff, the
voted to
information-
make
I
us
know,
lead
but-
agency.
Greg, the information
looking
you
at the
said
whole
that,
thing.
They're slightly biased.
the information that you said has not been shared with the town board. Has it been shared with the supervisor during private meetings?
There have been meetings that have been held, but the formal documents, no, have not been distributed.
The only
They have
thing
been
I
relo-
received when I requested the other day was I got a copy of the full environmental assessment form for the project and setting, and that was done by the applicant. Has that been distributed to the full board?
No, it has not.
Okay, is it the planning's responsibility, if you're coming up for SECRA, to be able to provide this information to the town board?
Yeah, I mean, we have copies available, I mean, the
But has it
planning.
been provided to the town board?
Yes.
part one has been distributed as part of the application,
Okay, so that was distributed to all of the town board?
Correct.
as part of
So, so everyone on the town board has this?
it's submitted to you by the town clerk as part of the special permit application. Because it's department.
It was submitted to the town clerk? And then distributed, but the town clerk was then charged with distributing it to the town board? Okay, and then I'd also like to ask the question for part 2 and 3. They are not on the website,
No, they're not.
and the town board has not been given part 2 or 3 of the EAF?
The town, it was distributed with copies of the resolution that you're voting on today.
I have the resolution, I did not receive that, who distributed it?
I did.
When was that?
I brought it over to town hall last week.
Who did you give it to?
I gave it to one of the councilwomen.
And so but that was not shared with the rest of the board?
I'm not sure if it was distributed to the rest of the board.
So my question is, in order to do a termination on secret, do you have to have the whole EAF completed?
Yes. Part one was submitted by the applicant, planning department completed part 2 and part 3.
Right, but the board has not been distributed part 2 or 3.
Part 3 is included as a copy of the resolution, it's a neg debt.
But the town board does not have a copy of part 2 or 3 that the planning board completed for this project, correct?
The part 3 is the neg
Jeff,
debt.
if you could step up to the mic, please.
Do we have,
You have the part 3, which is included in the resolution that you have before you to vote on, which is the neg debt.
where is the part?
Part 2 is the
could I-
EAF part 2, which Greg just said was distributed last.
Diane, do you have that as part of this?
We do not identify it as an EAF part 3. The EAF part 3 is the negative declaration, which is the resolution you have before you that you're deliberating on at this time.
But normally there's a model form as part of DEC to be used as part 3, correct?
For the part 2 and part 1, yes. The part 3 is the determination by this body as lead agency.
But is there a form that
And
you
you-
fill
and
out
you-
with explanation? That's this one.
That's the secret.
So where is-
You have the
Let him
resolution in
answer
front
a
of you.
question,
I-
please.
The
Tim,
resolution.
I'm asking him.
The
Yeah, you're
resolution-
asking without letting him answer.
Cause he keeps repeating the same thing, that part 3 is here. I
Let him
understand
talk.
that, I'm asking for part 2.
Let him talk.
Well,
Stop
I don't know how
stepping
you guys
over
are
him.
even sitting up here without having that information to determine secret on such a large project. I find that
I'm
reprehensible.
wondering how you knew that information but didn't choose to share it
Because-
with the board.
Because we are in charge of
Because if
sitting
you're
here
in charge
at,
of the board, you should share that information with the board if you had it and you knew about it. And
I
you
don't have
didn't.
it, Tim, that's
Shame
my
on
point.
you.
Who has it?
Yeah.
I don't have part 2.
Yeah,
Who
well,
has it?
I got a bridge to sell you too.
All right, Tim, you show me part 2. You have it?
With me? No, I do not
What,
have it.
have you seen it?
I have to see
So-
what you're
Well, I'm
referring
just
to
gonna
as
say, the
part
part
two.
2, have you seen it?
Let me see what
No.
part 2 is up there, Jeff.
We have not seen it.
I'm not gonna say yes until I see the paper that I need to see.
And that's what this is right here.
So this is, what is this? Can we all have copies of
Greg,
this,
is this-
please?
Greg, if you could go back to the microphone, please. I have a few questions for you.
So you're handing us a draft.
Oh, I saw this.
But you're handing us a draft, EAF, on a project of this size, you're handing us a draft. Am I correct in saying that you're handing me a draft copy?
Correct. I stamped that out when I distributed it to your office.
Okay, and why is it a draft and not a final, if you're trying to determine secret?
I mean, I have a clean copy. I marked that draft when it was first distributed to your office.
Jeff, could you please answer this? Why we're sitting up here as a town board without a complete EAF as part of a secret determination, which is dictated by state law and DEC, and you're handing us at this 11th, 12th hour, a draft part 2?
Okay, a couple of corrections. One is a draft document until such time as the town board accepts it and deliberates on and adopts the neg deck, which is what you're doing today. That's the purpose and proceedings of today. The document was handed out to the town board last week.
All right, so then I have questions on this. On this draft part 2, we have something moderate to large impact may occur.
Which number are you referring to specifically?
On impact on land.
Which number is that? Can you page that number there?
That's the very first
First page,
So you're referring to question 1F, that the proposed action may result in increased erosion, whether from physical disturbance or vegetation removal. This project does require regrading a large piece of property. The property will be required to prepare a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is administered by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, to ensure that there is no erosion and sedimentation onto neighboring properties and into any wetlands. So that aspect of the project will be mitigated by the requirement of a stormwater pollution preparation plan.
And that's listed where?
That's
Where's-
listed,
where's that where's that
that's listed in
explanation
part
to the
3,
board?
that's listed in the resolution.
And it's part of our town code that says that any ground disturbance of over an acre requires a stormwater pollution prevention plan. Out of this whole report, where there are maybe 50 questions, and there's a portion that the planning staff has to answer. Are they relevant part 1 questions? No or small impact may occur, or moderate to large impact may occur. Out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34,
No,
35,
nothing. There you
36,
go.
37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42,
No,
43, 44,
no, you
45,
can't.
46. Out of 50 questions, out of 50 questions on here, there are only 2 that you have indicated in your staff report that are moderate to large impact may occur. One of them being, the proposed action may result in increased erosion, whether from physical disturbance or vegetation removal, including from treatment by herbicides. That would be covered under the stormwater pollution prevention, which is in our town code for disturbed property of more than an acre. The only other one out of all of these 50 questions in your review, because that's what you do for protocol, is you review these applications and you make a recommendation to the town board. The other one is, the proposed action may sever, cross, or otherwise limit access to agricultural land, including cropland, hayfields, pasture, vineyard, orchard, etc. And that's the only one that's listed as moderate to large impact may occur. And this property is zoned industrial,
And
correct?
which page is that one on?
And if I may,
Page
Did
5.
you
Alright.
say impact on plants and animals? That's
So
a
we have
yes.
two areas which have moderate to large impact in a type 1 action.
2 out of 50.
if I may, there were 3 sections that were identified as being potentially moderate to large impacts.
Okay, so
One of them,
there's-
as you stated, dealt with the erosion, which was question 1F. The other question, as Ms. Giglio identified, was question 8B, which referred to the agricultural soils. Within the body of the resolution, we did consider those the moderate to large impacts. The question 8B, we responded to that the proposed action will impact soils identified as Riverhead Sandy Loam RDB, Riverhead Sandy Loam RDA, and Haven Loam HAA, as identified on the full environmental assessment form. The nature of the proposed construction of a solar farm is such that aside from the grading and drainage plans, the grounds and the soils are left intact on site. They are not exported, whereas with similar industrial large-scale development that could result in the exportation of a lot of those prime agricultural soils, these soils will be left on site. The solar panels are driven into stakes on the ground, at which time they can be removed at a later time, and the property can be reverted back to agricultural production.
Can I just address Jeff for a minute, please? Jeff, you do see the dilemma in this, okay? We have a solar project that is, what, 22.7, 22.9 megawatts? You know, 2 more megawatts, and it's at an Article 10 at the state level. We have another solar project, very similar to this solar project, down the road from there, that was a positive declaration. There is concern about the cumulative effect of all of the solar projects together in our industrial property land, okay? So these are questions of concern. Whether this would turn out to be a negative deck or positive deck, I don't know, because the town board was not afforded the ability to sit and discuss this at a work session. You know, and I find that that is very difficult to be sitting up here, to be giving this a negative declaration when we haven't had a chance to go over everything. I mean, we have 11, impact on open space and recreation. We know that it's a place of recreation right now. We know we have 40 to 50,000 people going there a year for recreation, yet you left that blank. Okay, so that's a concern to me. And then there's some other areas I have also. And as I said, Nextera, I think, has done their part. They got their full environmental assessment. This came into your office in September of 2018. In May, I believe, Greg came and presented to us back in April. In May, we chose lead agency for this. We had 30 days. There was comment backs for other agencies that none of us have seen to be able to make a determination whether it's significant or not, because we don't know what any of the other agencies said. And now, nothing has been done, and now we're sitting here at a special board meeting where we're just receiving a draft of Part 2 that we have not had a chance to review with any of our expert planning staff for the full assessment, and we're asking, being able to make a decision. I think that this is putting the cart before the horse here. And as I said, whether it'll be a positive declaration or a negative declaration, I don't know, but we have not been afforded the opportunity as a board to thoroughly vet and review this process. And that's what I find disturbing. So I apologize if I was getting snippy with you. That wasn't my intention. My intention is that this is a huge project here in the town of Riverhead, in an industrial area, and I wanna make sure we get this right, because we know Solar One, we post them not a positive deck, and then we're telling, you know, Nextera, they're not a positive deck, and I don't see the nexus of why we're not looking at this cumulatively.
And I would just like to say that I'm disturbed at the fact that this resolution to deem this negative declaration was prepared the 3rd week in September, and your office told planning staff not to put it in Minitrack and send it over.
Jody, you know what,
Yes,
you make up
he's
lies
right here.
again and again
No,
and
he's right
again
here.
and again.
He'll say it on the record.
Girls,
He
girls.
was told by your office not to send it over, and we would have had all this information that you're asking about.
The
Why have
E-
you been
the
holding
E-
this up?
The EAF, to complete the application going forward, was done on October 29th. So that says, if you were putting a resolution decking it, you never even did Part 2. So I have a problem with that.
Okay,
That
well,
you're declaring it a neg
No.
deck before you even fill out the paperwork.
Why was he told by your office not to
He
send a
wasn't
negative
told by me.
declaration
He
over?
wasn't told.
He's right here, he'll say it on the record.
He has to fill out this
Ooh.
form before you can determine
Right.
it.
Girls,
Jeff,
girls.
do you have to fill out Part 2 to make a determination whether the pos deck or neg deck's up, and you use that information to come up with a conclusion?
Girls, girls.
Yes or no, Jeff?
The final paperwork has to be completed. That does not, that document does is conclude what staff's review and analysis has been.
So
The
if you-
staff review and analysis has begun on solar farms long before this. It began from my end, back 7 years ago when I started working for the town with the first solar farm, which was STR. That was not POSDEC. I reviewed the second solar farm, which is the S-Power and East Side that was not POSDEC. The third solar farm was POSDEC by the planning board. Staff did not recommend a positive declaration. It was a split vote of the planning board at that time. It was very controversial whether or not to even POSDEC that. Nextera comes in, and by the way, it came back and they remedied and mitigated all their potential adverse impacts. Nextera comes in, does their due diligence, looks at the EIS for S-Power 1. They presented all their information up front that S-Power did not as part of the prior application. So I reviewed 4 of these so far. So my review of this, based upon 4 applications, I had a pretty good idea, and doing 7 years of analysis of solar farms going into this, knowing the property very well, knowing the recreational use that was going on at the property at the time. The application that you see before you is reducing, excuse my friend, cutting down very, very few trees, far fewer less than any of the other permitted uses in the zoning category.
Well, Jeff, it would be nice to know all of this, but we were not afforded the
We've talked about this at the
opportunity
work
to
session,
hear
we've
all of
talked
this.
about it at the public hearing, we've talked about it individually.
Jeff, none of, at the work session on April
All right.
17th, it says specifically in there that we're going to review everything after that for SECRA.
And staff's recommendation, based upon all this analysis, concluded with the Part 2. All that did was to summarize all of our analysis and findings on this application.
But then isn't this the information that needs to be provided to the body that's going to make a
And it was.
determination to be able to make an informed decision about whether to POSDEC or NEGDEC
And we did.
on October 29th, correct?
We submitted it,
October 29th. Okay,
yep.
okay.
Well,
And
the
this
bottom
is-
line is, we need logical legal reasoning for neg decking this as opposed to pos decking it, and we just haven't really had a lot of discussion about this. And so, I don't think we should be railroading this through,
Well,
Are
we
we-
could
are we-
have, since September, the end of September, when this negative declaration was prepared, had it been put on for a work session and brought to the town board.
Jody, you can say whatever you want, but you have to have this part two to be able to make a determination. This was completed on October 29th. I don't care, you know, if people were saying, okay, I got this one on September of 2018, why weren't we doing it in October 2018? You cannot make a determination till this paperwork is completed, and it was not completed until the end of October.
Going back a few minutes ago, or even longer, when I requested to see what part two was, I have not seen that. I have not received that.
We have never seen that.
So what I would suggest is let common sense prevail, let heads cool off. I apologize to Greg and Jeff for the way you were treated, that's wrong, and I would like to make a motion to table this, so we can look into it further and get all the paperwork that we need to make the decision properly.
I agree with you.
I agree with that, Tim.
All right, can I have a first and second to table this resolution? You can, yes.
Make it public.
It has to be public.
It is.
And it always has been, do your research.
Nobody knew about trees being cut down, nobody.
You know what,
That was
I'm
discussed
sorry,
publicly.
there's no conversation
this-
back and
yeah,
forth
this-
from the audience,
this
if
thing
you'd
is
like to
Trump
come
rally.
up. Barbara's coming up, if you wanna talk about something before, otherwise, we will vote on the resolution, and I will leave it open for public comment again, still after that.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Barbara Blass. I live in Jamesport. I am delighted that you have chosen to consider tabling this because, quite honestly, it really was not ready for prime time. The resolution as presented today, I picked up in the hallway. It was not online. The caption was online. But the body of the resolution was not. It doesn't even say what the acreage is. We don't know how many solar panels that, you know, are being proposed on this particular, how big is this acreage, do we know?
It's 191.7, I think.
It's not here, but in any event, the neg deck that is being proposed or is being recommended for the following reasons, identified the stormwater management plan is a requirement, as Councilwoman Giglio said, is a requirement in any standard site plan,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you propose that as mitigation? You would have to do that anyway. That is not mitigation. You can't use standard regulations to mitigate a potential impact. That doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. The exportation of the soils, I understand there's going to be a balance cut and fill, no prime soils are being exported. But the 74.6 acres of land which has been historically farmed, which in the long form actually describes it as actively farmed.
It does.
I have a copy of it. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
It talks about it being active farmland. And I'm just a little concerned about this because I know Greg and I have had a discussion about this in context with the clearing restrictions. And that was in the S-Power 2 application, which I know is before the state, there was communication with Ag and Markets. And Ag and Markets has on the record a determination or a statement that says after 20 years, this is New York State Ag and Markets, after 20 years, they do not believe that the agricultural property is suitable for farming. Now, if this, well, you know, I'm saying that's what Ag and Markets, we can go to, I can present that letter, whoever it is that signed it, you know, you can verify that, but my point
very
is, if you're
That
saying
it will no longer be considered.
if
Very disruptive.
you're no longer, I mean, if you are considering, or you're stating something to the contrary, I don't know where you get that from. If there's a document that directly nullifies their previous opinion, it should be in here, because you're saying that this is a mitigation, you don't have to worry about that, because it can revert to agriculture, and New York State Ag and Market says it can't. So I'm not making it up, I'm just saying it's something that you're putting in here as mitigation, or not necessarily mitigation, but demonstrating that it's not going to have a potential negative impact. and I don't have any proof to the contrary
do we.
that, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's what they're saying, but then.
That's New York State Ag and Markets. I mean, who else would we go to as an
Right.
expert in that?
Well, it's our planning department that's putting it in
And-
here.
And it
So-
is industrial zone property, so.
But Jody, whether it's industrial zone, whether it's zoned for, recreation, the statement here is that we don't have to worry about the loss of the of agricultural production of that property because you can revert to agriculture after 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's what it's saying.
Greg, so.
And I know we had the discussion, and if there is further documentation that nullifies their prior opinion or their prior statement of record, that would be great to know, but right now, I didn't find it. And I would love to see the information presented to the department on the health concerns or alleviating health concerns. I had a brief review of the file in the town clerk's office. There was nothing to that that spoke to the health concerns. So I would very much love to see that, and in fact, again, should be part of this whole analysis. If an issue was raised, we shouldn't be guessing. We shouldn't be saying this, it's over here and it's not over there.
Bob, that was solar too, right?
I'm sorry?
With the health impacts, it was solar two, where that statement was made in the solar two, in the impacts.
Well, wouldn't it not be relevant for any and all other solar projects? Solar 2 is not even something that is within the control of this town board. But if we're going to
No.
pick, right?
The information was useful from solar two,
But did
even
you
though
have
it's
to
not
address
under
it? So-
review from this
so-
board.
But Councilman Giglio, if there's an issue that's arising on this instant application, what are you going to do? Oh, somewhere along on the web, there's information in another application. No, that's the whole purpose of identifying potential concerns and amassing them all together, so you don't have to take a guessing game. So somebody who had the opportunity to say, hey, I wanna go read that file, I wanna know that everything has been taken into consideration, and this project is good to go. They wouldn't see that information in there. This gentleman didn't see that I didn't see that, I didn't even know that existed. That's in another realm entirely. And if it's pertinent and you're using it as the basis of your decision here, it's gotta be here. It can't be anyplace else. Were you going to address that? Because I do have a short statement that I was going to read as well. Did you want to? You sure?
He's a patient man, Greg.
So first of all, up until yesterday, I guess at some point, none of the documentation was online. So I did my best to try to assemble comments rather quickly, so I apologize in advance. They're rather disjointed and they're probably not complete, but it's the best I was able to do. I'm quite shocked and frankly appalled that the application, which was submitted last year, a type 1 action under New York State thresholds and the Riverhead Town Code, is receiving a negative declaration without any opportunity for public input until now. No information was readily available. The public is supposed to be included in this process. Why are we continually discouraged and essentially excluded from participating? You need go no further than page 4 of the seeker handbook to read the importance of public participation in the seeker process. How can the town ignore its files on a previous determination of significance involving a similar project in the same geographic location? There is precedent in the POSDEC determination the planning board gave on S-Power. While many of the impacts are similar, what serves as mitigation to identified impacts on one project cannot simply be restated or substituted for actual review, and you certainly can't use it to justify a negative declaration. Some specific comments and questions. How many acres involved? You gave me that information, thank you. How many solar panels would be installed with this project, do we know?
I don't know offhand.
What's the total number of megawatts already approved and in the approval process within the 11933 zip code? we should have some cumulative inventory. How many solar panels does that translate to? Couple of 100,000?
I am not
We
sure
should
on the
have
number.
that
As I said, we haven't sat down and had a work session to review, and this is it, you're looking at.
I know one of the projects, and it might have been S-Power too, I'm not sure, was 130,000, but I don't know what S-Power one is. Do we know how many? No? Okay, so, again, cumulative visual impact,
The
if nothing
megawatts,
else.
the megawatts I have somewhere here.
Okay. The narrative that was posted online, I guess sometime yesterday, didn't include the appendices, which are referred to in the report as containing information and explanation of statements made in the document. So of course I always have questions, right? And I said, go to the appendix, they're not there. They're not there, they're not up there. If you wanted any further information, for example, about the decommissioning plan, the communication with U.S. Fish and Wildlife or the DEC, the wetlands, and the consultation on the cultural resources with New York State, you're out of luck. You can't find it. Do you have it in the clerk's office? I don't know. Did you ever? I don't know where it is. They're not online.
Not
That's part
readily
of the
available.
document. That's part of the, page 7 of the EAF indicated that the proposed action requires an upgrade to an existing substation. Is that the Edwards Avenue substation?
I believe so, it was hard to
Yes.
tell from the documentation, it just said an upgrade to the substation, so we're not clear on what that is. Or I'm not clear on what that is.
So in March of this year, Planning Board Chairman Carey asked whether the expansion of the substation would be subject to town permitting and the environmental process. I read the exchange between Mr. Murphy and Mr. Ehlers, and the discussion resulted in they were not sure whether it would require town permitting, whether we had jurisdiction. And they said the jury was still out, but there was going to be a definitive legal answer to that question. Have we received the answer to
I
that
believe
question?
the answer, and Bob, you can clarify this for me, but I believe that they did do some expansion on it. The original plans for the substations, which I think they were having some difficulty located, they did locate them, and please let me know if I'm right, that did include the expansion that they did recently.
So
So
it's
whether there's further
outside-
expansion on that, on the plan, site plan beyond what's already been done, as permissible, I do not know if they've done the complete build-out from it.
So it's outside of our permitting jurisdiction?
We located a site plan from 2007 that contemplated or showed the build-out that was contemplated here, we think, based upon that plan.
Do you know how much more the substation can absorb? How much more activity? Do you know?
That's it.
I'm not sure,
I'm sorry?
I mean, as far as megawatts or as far as?
Yes.
That was discussed at the work session when we discussed Solar 2. And it was discussed whether or not, what the expansion of the existing facility could be. And we were given that information and it was emailed to us.
Okay, but I'm asking the question, how many more solar facilities can be built with that substation at,
Without an upgrade?
capacity?
The
Without-
expansion was limited because the property area was limited.
But
Mr.
the
Murphy, if you
intensity
could
of
come
the
up and
use-
maybe just
okay.
address that?
May I just say, as a special permit criteria, the intensity of the use has to be justified. If you have a magnet that exists at that substation, and you have, appropriate land in the 11933 zip code, how much of that should be or can be appropriately developed for solar? It's depending upon the.
The substation, correct.
The substation.
Correct.
So shouldn't we know that information? You may have that
Yeah.
information. It's certainly not in this document.
Well, I think all of us are sitting up here and we don't know that answer.
Okay.
You do?
It was
Do you send to
discussed,
us?
and
Yes.
from what I understand, with the addition of this solar, project, the substation would be able to handle all the megawatts that were coming in.
How about the next one? Do we know how many?
No, I think it was gonna be about maxed out with this one coming in.
It would be good to
I don't think they were
know.
able to handle any more, and as a matter of fact, I think even to handle this one, I could be wrong, but I think they have to make some adjustments to handle this one. But the adjustments, from what I understand, were gonna be done inside the building itself. There was not gonna be any expansion of the footprint, but they could do something inside the building to handle the additional megawatts that were coming in.
And that's all wonderful information that you have, and each of you may have anecdotally. It should be memorialized in this analysis. That's part of what a seeker determination does when you are analyzing a project, and I didn't see any information about that at all. You're not planning for future sustainable growth of this town, you're actually just reacting and in fact facilitating a business arrangement between two private entities. Information provided by the applicant lists several species of plants and animals listed by the federal government or the New York State as endangered, threatened, or species of concern, including acknowledgement of the tiger salamander, I know we can all chuckle now, within 40 yards of the project, 40 yards. How does this project, together with prior approved solar projects on neighboring parcels, impact the entire wildlife in the community? I'm not sure that we got that information. Has the town obtained the underground utility profile underneath Edwards Avenue?
No.
You have not?
No.
Okay, so, I believe the staff report that Mr. Bergman, prepared said that that had to be done prior to the determination of significance, and do you remember that? Okay. There was also, a concern or, uncertainty about the ownership of Canoe Lake Drive. Have we determined who owns that?
I think Greg may have that information.
You have that as well? Okay, so do we need an easement to that? No easement, okay, that's good to know. Again, easements, this is all interesting information that now, we're asking. Okay. Project description states that the applicant has signed a 30-year power purchase agreement, which requires the town to approve a special permit duration of 20 years and include the 2 5-year extensions. How does that happen? How do we do that? Our code says 20-year max with the option that an applicant can come back for 2 5-year extensions, provided they make an application to the town board at that time. They are, it says, they use the word require, and I will find it in the document if you choose to not take my word for it, that they are required to get, at this time, approval for 30 years.
I saw that also.
They may require that, but our town code, as you have indicated, says 20 years. So we would have to change the town code in order to accommodate them for the 30 years, or they're going to have to make special arrangements with LIPA and say the town is not giving us 30 years right now. They can't. Their town code does not allow them to.
That's a conflict that is obviously, we're all aware of now, has not been addressed in this documentation. It's just open-ended. That's what they want, that's what they're requiring. We have not said anything at all about our special permit requirements and the potential for the extension for the additional 10 years. New York State Department of Parks and Historical Preservation recommended a phase 1, in that it was determined that most of the project site is in an a sensitive area. Okay.
What area?
New York State Department of Parks and Historic Preservation recommended a phase 1 archaeological. The resulting documentation must be reviewed by that department.
I believe that that is part of the appendix for Appendix E.
Okay, well, I didn't know that
I-
because I didn't see Appendix E, because it's not anywhere from.
Correct.
And what did they say?
They said that they have reviewed the information submitted on built resources and will not require any additional building surveys to be conducted. There are no resources eligible for listing on the state or national registry of historic places involved in the project.
Okay. Our town code, I believe it or not, also says that when you have a report of that nature, actually it's supposed to be reviewed by the planning board as well. Just throwing that in. The action requires the storage of over 7,000 gallons of petroleum, specifically dielectric fluid, 650 gallons in each of the 11 inverters over our sole source aquifer. Did the lead agency demonstrate that they took the necessary steps to safeguard the aquifer? Was there any discussion about
Well, we have not reviewed this other than here, so we have not looked at a map, we don't know where they're going, we don't know in relationship to where they are, we haven't been able to question.
Item C on page 10 of the EAF asks whether the site is used for recreation by the public, and the applicant answered no. Page 3 of the narrative says the eastern parcel corresponds to the former Calverton Links Golf Course, now privately operated by Long Island Sports Park and used primarily for commercial disc and miniature golf and paintball activities. We've all acknowledged that that is indeed the accurate use of the property. Seeker requires a discussion of removal of lands in recreational use. That is something that they call out specifically in the handbook. And I found no discussion of that in the documentation. Approximately 75 acres of agricultural property is being removed. Have non-agricultural sites been identified and studied as an alternative? Are there other sites that have been identified that would be appropriate for this use?
We have not received any other sites.
The planning board, in its positive deck of S Power 1, indicated as and identified a potentially adverse impact. It said, evaluation of other sites in Suffolk County with similar parcel size and regulatory permit issues which would permit similar facilities such that available agricultural or manufacturing industrial lands within Riverhead Town not be depleted for regional benefit. By the way, just as an interesting aside, it's my understanding that this electricity is being supplied to supplement the South Fork demand during the summer months. That's what I've heard. I don't know for sure, but that's what I've heard.
Might as well throw it out there.
Well, I'm
not sure.
okay. But I do know of this, ironically, none of the South Fork municipalities, not Southampton nor East Hampton, zone for this. They just flat out don't allow it. And further, in a recent article on 27 East, that was discussing one of the wind projects out in the, off the coast of East Hampton, one of the elected officials actually said that he was concerned they didn't this was a quote, and I'll get to that as well, they didn't even want to see wind turbines on the horizon in the ocean. They didn't want to see that. And how many acres of solar panels are we going to be driving by? I'm just wondering. I don't believe the town has identified all the relevant environmental impacts, thoroughly analyzed them, and provided sufficient reasoning and justification to support a determination of non-significance. I really don't know what else to say other than I don't wish that you get the impression that I'm somehow anti-business, totally tree-hugging, stop everything at all costs, you know, petting the salamanders and the like. I am just as much for renewables as the next person. It's a lofty goal. I think the two can be certainly compatible with each other, but there's a process that we must follow. And if not saying that it's going to stop the project, nobody's looking to stop a project. It just has to be certain
You have to
that
follow the
we're not putting there are not any adverse impacts to our community, who quite honestly is not receiving a whole lot of identified benefits.
So you had several questions, and I think
did.
Greg is prepared to answer most of them, so we have them so that we can ask him the questions one by one?
I just also wanted to correct, it's not 191 acres, it's 197 acres.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I came up to answer one question specifically. Mrs. Blast referred to the New York State Ag and Markets comment, which stated that after 20 years, the land is no longer agriculturally viable. I spoke with the attorney who submitted those comments from the New York State Ag and Markets Department, and that I wanted to understand the basis for that comment, whether it had to do with the viability of the soils or some other reason. The comment that I was told, and she would not provide it in writing, was that the viability of that agricultural land was deemed that it would not be returned to agriculture based on the availability of someone to farm it. So none of the concerns from the New York State Ag and Markets Department did not have to do with the viability of the soils, the nutrients, the ability to farm. It was about the ability to find farmers. Now, the land itself, they didn't indicate that it depleted the nutrients or the ability to farm. So that was one thing I wanted to clarify. She touched on a lot there, which I can't answer right now, but there is.
Well, I think that's part of, having the discussion at a work session.
Correct. Well, there was another comment, about the duration. The town code permits the town board to issue a 20-year special permit for the solar farm with the possibility of 5-year extensions at the request of the applicant. The town code does not specify when those applications or those requests may be made. It does not state that, in the 19th year, the applicant can come back and request an additional 5-year extension. It does not state at the beginning. So, at this point, at the submission of the application, the applicant is requesting the 20 years and 2 additional 5 years. So they are following the town code because there is no time frame that is listed within that duration. Again, there was too many comments for me to give you answers to specifically right now, but yeah, I mean, this should come back to work session so we can get these flushed out.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Greg.
Fill your pause on, will you?
All right, so anybody else wanting to comment? Actually, we have to vote on the resolution. We have a first and second already?
We have first
I
and
say we
second to
table it.
table. so
Yeah,
far.
no, I know. Did we do a first and second to table?
No.
Okay, can I get a first and second to table?
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, vote please.
Yes to table.
Yes.
Yes, and I hope that we have a special work session put up to discuss all of these items, because the deadline was October 31st. They were told that a resolution was gonna be put up on November 6th, and now we're, much further into the month, and LIPA is making a decision on this, I'm told, on November 16th. And if the decision for the negative declaration doesn't happen before then, and this project goes by the wayside, I feel that we're putting the residents of the town at risk. And I think that this should have been brought to our attention the end of September when the negative declaration was prepared. And I will vote yes to table.
Yes, I'm not gonna pontificate. Although we could.
I vote yes to table. This has been sitting here for a while. It's unfortunate that we are down to this wire when Nextera is looking to go before the regulatory agency with them. So it is unfortunate, but I don't think that supersedes us doing our due diligence. So I'm glad that we are tabling this to be able to look at it appropriately, and hopefully we can do that swiftly, so we can come to a conclusion.
Move to adjourn.
All right, is there anybody else from the public? Resolution. Table. We have an open comment period, so if you'd like to comment. You just need to come up to the microphone before comment.
I want you guys to take into consideration, because there is no where to find what the cost of decommissioning one of these solar farms are. If you think about the millions and millions of panels that will be there, the cost, everywhere else, tens of millions of dollars. Does Riverhead have that money?
Well, it's part of the code that they have to come up with a decommissioning plan. Agree
Right.
that we can take a very hard look at the decommissioning plan.
And not only that, but the average solar farm company is only alive 4 to 6 years. 60% of them have gone bankrupt. They have no employees. 0. NextEra has 0 employees. Look it up on their annual reports. They're all called unit holders. Okay, all that money goes to offshore, international globalists. That's where it goes. Who's gonna be left with the cleanup? Thousands of acres of solar farms, panels piled up. Who's gonna remove this? The cost, the hazmat teams. You can't remove solar panels without a hazmat team. The fire department, if there's a fire, there's no evacuation plan. What happens when this all goes up into black smoke and there's a wildfire in one of the Pine Barrens again, like they had? Now, all this stuff settles in the communities around it. What's the health risk of that? They haven't even done any of this. This is years. You're pushing this through. We gotta meet these deadlines, If you don't think that LIPA is gonna move their deadline for you, you're out of your mind. They'll push that goalpost forever to get this done. Yeah, no, I'm not wrong. They'll push it forever.
Move to adjourn.
But trust me, do your due diligence, don't rush this, and let everybody have a say in this, cause I guarantee you'll find that the people don't want it.
Okay, thank you very
Nice
much.
hat.
Anybody else looking to comment? Seeing nobody, I'd like to close the meeting. All in favor? Opposed? So carried.